So if you're new to homeschooling, or if you're new to planning for your homeschool, then I know that it can feel incredibly overwhelming. Maybe you have many children, maybe you only have one, but you definitely have many books. There's a lot that needs to get done over the course of a year, and it can feel out of your control to understand the whole year over the summer months and make a plan that you will actually stick with. So today what I'm hoping to help you with is how to plan your homeschool year. What are the steps that are involved both philosophically and practically so that you can set yourself up to engage with beautiful ideas with your children in a life-giving way. So, hey, welcome back to The Commonplace. My name is Autumn. I like to talk about classical education, particularly for the homeschooling mother, but of course we have many non-homeschooling people who are around here, and that makes me very happy because these are ideas that are meant for the soul, which means they are for all persons. And today we're going to dig into what that can look like for planning your homeschool year. So obviously the first thing, which if you've been here, you know I'm going to say, is you have to understand your philosophy. Now, I'm not asking you to go on Instagram or to even grab a book and just believe that because an authority figure has told you this is the best one, that it is in fact the best one. What I think you need to spend time doing is consider if the thing itself is just true. We live in objective reality, which means actually we can know that there is a philosophy education that has been written in just like natural law. As Charlotte Mason, one of my favorites, says, water flows and fire burns. This is just how reality is, and there are laws of education that are as obvious and as knowable as that. So spend some time getting your philosophy in order. Otherwise, I promise you, everything else will fall apart. And the reason why it'll fall apart is because without your philosophy, you don't really know where you're headed. And as all moms know, if you don't know where you're trying to get, you're not going to know the steps to take. You're going to be on this wild adventure that feels a lot like choose your own adventure. And while sometimes that can seem fun, if you don't land where you wanted to with your kids as educated people, what was the point in all of the work? What were you doing? Every mother I have ever met wants what is best for her child. Some can articulate that they want a flourishing person who loves God and loves others. Others can articulate that they want a whole-souled child who loves what is true, good, and beautiful. Other people can articulate they want happy children. And if you're talking about Aristotle's definition of happiness, which means the habitual action of virtue, then yeah, me too. But a lot of times you don't know how to get there if you haven't articulated your end. So think about the end of an education, even if your kids are 3. I just had 2 moms over from church. Their eldest are both 3 years old. And the question I asked was, what at the end of education do you want your child to have received? Who do you want them to be? If you don't start there, you don't know where to begin. And again, another point for Charlotte Mason, you have to know your end. And you have to begin with it in mind. Now that whole bit actually is something called the final cause from the 4 causes of Aristotle. And I'm not going to go too far into that. I actually have a video talking about the 4 causes, but there's another cause that is equally as important, which is the material cause. And this is the one that I think everyone can get really excited about when they're planning for homeschooling, because you get to think about the materials that you want, because they're proper materials for a proper education. But we also don't want to be materialists who live in a materialistic world. So obviously there's some wisdom necessary, but you will need to gather certain things for your children in order to educate them. Mostly books. You're going to need really good books, living books, which means books that have ideas within them that bring life to the mind. You know how you feed your kid and your responsibility is to give them healthy food, but you aren't the one that makes their legs grow. You aren't the one that makes their coordination happen. The body knows how to do these things, but it must be supplied with that which it needs in order to flourish. The mind, the exact same. You give the mind living ideas or the right food for it, and it will grow. They will also need materials to do their work, like pens and paper, notebooks, paints, different things like that. Are you giving them those sorts of materials? Are you supplying them with what they need to engage with the ideas they are receiving? They're going to need the natural world. The natural world is a huge part of an education for a person. They're going to need to be out of doors. Maybe you live in the city, which I did for a very long time, and so you need to make note of the trails and the water spots, the creek holes that you want to take them to so they can live in nature as much as they can. Maybe you need to think about the family rhythms of your home, the habits of the household, the things like chores and meaningful work in the kitchen and hospitality. They're going to need these things as part of their education. The material matters. We need to give some thought to it as well. But then there is the practical side of actually handling the homeschooling. So all of that pre-work that I just mentioned is foundational. You can't really continue on without it. But I know that you're thinking, okay, well, I bought this curriculum and it has all these books, but I don't know when to read them and how often to read them and what if I had multiple children? And that gets into the practical stuff. But you cannot make those decisions without the philosophy, without the understanding of the end. And so that's why I started there. Now, one of the first things that I make every single year is my academic calendar. I have a very small printed one here. I will put something up on the screen to show it to you. But the reason why I start this is because I think it's important to start with the concept of time. You only have so much time. The way you order your time says something about God, others, reality, and so on. The way you spend your time shows what you love and you care about. The things you love are the things you behold. The things you behold are the things you become. And so all of this is actually much bigger than just plotting out 180 school days, if that is what your state like mine requires. So you may ask yourself questions like, when is our family unavailable? We go on holiday at this time, we travel for Christmas at this time, and you just go ahead and put on the calendar, get a yearly calendar, literally just like a 25, 26 yearly calendar, and mark out those days. We are never available on Fridays because it's co-op. So I know that I cannot do homeschool work on those days. Whatever it is, go ahead and put them down. Circle everyone's birthdays, anniversaries, things like that. Then ask yourself, do we want to order our life around something else as well? So perhaps for you it's liturgical tradition. You want to have the church's calendar on your calendar. You want to make sure that you are off of school on certain holy days or feast days. You want to make sure you have a lighter school during certain liturgical seasons. You know that you will not be schooling the entire Holy Week. You know that you need the week after that to have a break because Holy Week was so exhausting. Whatever it is, you need to put those things down first, because if you try to make, and this will become a repeated refrain from here on out, if you try to make the most ideal schedule, timetable, calendar, whatever it is, and you don't consider your real life, it will always fail. 100% you will fail. You will turn into some sort of atrocious mother who is trying to force life into a system that does not serve the family, because education is not a system. But you could even create a beautiful, color-coded, whimsical, wooden Narnian version of a timetable and shove people in it, and it still won't work. You have to actually consider your real life and the people who live in your home. So look at the whole year and then build your school year around those set things. These are the set things. How do we work around it? You can ask yourself fun questions like, when do we need rest? Rest is important. You need time for contemplation. You need time for leisure. This happens on the daily, but it should happen over the course of the academic year as well. So maybe you say, all right, I like the Sabbath rhythm. We're gonna do 6 weeks on, and then we'll take a week off. We're gonna do 5 weeks on, and then we'll take a week off because we have a 12-week term. I know that I need to have 3 12-week terms to have enough school days for my state, so I'm gonna plot those out. Or you think, I actually am someone who's a low energy mom. This is something I hear. I'm a low energy mom. I have chronic illness. I cannot school 5 days a week straight through. So we're in school all year. And by schooling all year, we only need to school 3 days a week. I'm not sure if the math is right on that, but something like that. You understand. If you have more time, you can do fewer days per week or fewer lessons per day. There are many ways that you can structure that for your family, but thinking about it is going to set you up to make education just living. Because isn't that what most of us want as homeschoolers? We want our children to adopt a posture of being encounters in the world where they are humble enough to always be learning. There's formal time at the table. This is not just all of life is your school. It's not that. But also all of life is, of course, teaching you something if you will receive it. And so you can teach your children and yourself how to move in the world in a honoring way to their finiteness, that they are limited, they cannot do all things at all times, and also to order themselves around the changing seasons, either liturgically or naturally, to take work time and rest time. And what does that look like as a healthy person? Yes, those things are things you can consider and set up in your homeschool academic year. So from there, I then make the daily timetable. As I was just explaining Common House, where I always do my summer planning series, I go way more in depth, show what I'm making, show how I'm making it, get the specifics. I showed them today my timetable. This is not my timetable. This is my paperwork for the state to say that I'm homeschooling. That's my affidavit, which, hey, that's part of your homeschooling prep over the summer. Get your paperwork in. So this right here is what I would call a perfect timetable. It's the most ideal thing you've ever seen. Every single piece of material that needs to be covered for my 3 formal students is on here. The right frequency for the right duration. What it does not account for is the humans who live in this house. So this is not my final timetable. This is simply the first draft in which I am able to see what all needs to happen. This will take some time the first time you do it. I understand that. But if you do it a couple of years, you start to get the hang of it that, hey, these 2 kids, I can do math with them at the exact same time. All 3 of these kids can do the same history together. When I do dictation for this kid, these 2 are gonna need independent work, so I'll have the older one read to the younger one. You start to figure out little tricks like that. But when you make your first timetable, you're just trying to get it all in front of your eyes. That is my best tip. Start getting it all in front of your eyes. Then sit down and consider, oh, there's a toddler in the house. The toddler will not follow this because the toddler is not a machine. The homeschool is not a machine, and the people everywhere else in the home, not a machine, right? So instead, I need to look at this and I need to find ways to make natural breakpoints, to find flex time. If I know that history should take us 20 minutes, I'm probably going to do 30. I'm just going to add 5 to 7 to 10 minutes into most of these blocks, which means I have a little wiggle room. That's probably how I'm going to fix this. It just means that more of my day is given over to schooling than has been when all my kids were in Form 1. I have one who's moved up to Form 2, so I have more work to complete with her. But I'm just going to build in that kind of time so that this becomes a life-giving thing. So it becomes not a big deal that if the toddler goes and pulls down a jar of beans, opens them, they go everywhere, and of course we need to clean them up so they don't go in her mouth. We can take that break and we can all help with that. It's okay if someone's having a hard day because we're actually educating a person, again, not a computer that we're programming, that I can say, hey, you know what? Take 10 minutes, go outside, run a couple laps around the property. You know what? Go make yourself a cup of tea, come back. We're not sitting here like minutes being gone on the timetable. We'll never catch back up. We'll never be able to live because this is really about learning how to live as a rightly ordered person. That's what the homeschool table is about. That's what this timetable is about. So on my first draft here is the ideal version of the timetable where everything runs as it ought, exactly as I expect it to, with everyone working at their very best. We'll maybe get 1 or 2 days like that a term throughout this year. It's not going to be the ordinary pace of our homeschool, so it's best not to plan like it's going to be the ordinary pace of your homeschool, and instead make flex time. So once I have my timetable, then I make something I call at a glance guide. I have other videos about this. I'll put a little picture of my one from last year up on the screen. Basically, it's how Ambleside Online asks you to break down your stuff if you're familiar with them. They say, hey, term 1, you need to read chapters 12 through 18. You know you have 10, 11, 12 weeks, whatever it is that you choose, and you break the chapters down week by week. I make this guide every single year. I have made it since my very first year of homeschooling because it allows me to see the entire term as a bird's eye overview. I know that as long as the work on this page gets done, even if I have to move things week by week because we were sick or we ended up traveling unexpectedly or something happens, I know that we've done it all if I can look at this and each week check off that all those were done. I love this guide. I don't know how I would live without this guide. I would have to go through, 35 pages of my curriculum to make sure everything was checked off from every stream of knowledge, from every subject, from every book, but instead I just make a super version. I'm hoping this year to make one even in my pre-reading notebook that's more of a simpler at a glance. I'm not exactly sure how it's gonna look yet, so I'm still figuring that out. But the at a glance, just made on Google Sheets, is key for us succeeding in a very simple way of just completing the work that we were supposed to complete. There is a need to do what must be done, and this helps me get it done. And so by making those 3 things, the calendar, the timetable, and the at a glance, I'm then able to move into my pre-reading. Again, I was just telling Common House, you wanna be mindful that you don't love the planning process more than you love the educating process. And I know that this will, really only apply to some women who, like me, really love planning and organizing and buying materials and getting things set up and having the ideal in front of them, but then the actual doing can be like, oh no, it's not as perfect as I envisioned it. So you wanna make sure that you actually enjoy the doing too. So with pre-reading, not all of my subjects, but many of my subjects, this is where I touch the actual material. This is where you plan your lessons, and it is the last thing to come in my summer planning. It takes the most time, particularly having 3 formal students, it takes the most time, but it is the very last thing I touch. And I think one of the biggest issues in new moms learning how to plan for their homeschool is they start here without all that foundational work that we've just worked through. But once it's time to pre-read, I simply grab a dotted notebook. I like dotted and I like a ruler, and I draw out grids, sort of like a bullet journal. I have a system that I like where for each book that I'm covering, I will have a 2-page spread. I will make my week column, so all my weeks are there with the notations for which pages or which chapters are being covered. I will write the important names that are coming out of each chapter or each book, whatever it is. And this, of course, could be names of people, places, events, things like that. Then I write a simple narration that I am writing for my own. Narration is a telling back. If you're not familiar with the Charlotte Mason broader classical tradition, it's definitely narration through Mason, but it does exist in the broader tradition. And I do that because, like a lot of moms, I am desirous, I hope to re-educate myself along with my children. And to fall into even machine mode as the mother planner, I could just go through and take the notes I need really quickly to throw together lesson plans for my kids. But I too want to be changed and formed by the ideas that we are studying. That's partly why I enjoy homeschooling so much, is that we're all learning together. But if I remove the learning from me, then in some sense, we're missing like a huge part of my cultivation as their mother. And of course, the mother teacher is the curriculum in many respects. And so I also need to be learning in order to engage with them and their ideas. So I will take my own narration. Then I'll write down any captain ideas or inspiring ideas, which Charlotte Mason would say help whet the appetite of the student, help them bring their attention to mind as you begin reading to them. I'll write down any points of discussion that come to mind as I'm reading this summer that I'm probably not going to remember by the 22nd week of school. And so I will write those down, and then I'll write down any like materials or map work or timeline work or anything that I want to make sure we do when we get to our notebooks. And that pretty much runs out a Charlotte Mason method of a lesson. I have plenty of videos about the philosophy and practical nature of Charlotte Mason. In fact, my entire season 2 of my podcast, we got a lot of Mason around here. And so those things help me plan out my lessons. And then I just get to work. The rest of the summer is literally me grabbing book after book, drawing grid after grid, taking note after note. And I don't say that as monotonous, and I don't say that as drudgery. It's where the fun is. It's the planning, it's the engaging with the material, it's the seeing the books, it's laying out the lessons, it's getting my kids excited. They see the books coming, they see them going up above the fireplace in our homeschool area. They see like everything that we're doing that's coming for them. And they have questions and they want to know. And even that excites them. It ignites that passion for what's coming in the school year, which I think is a huge part as well. So that would be my very brief crash course on how to plan your homeschool year, the foundations that need to be in place before you ever move into practical lesson planning. If you're curious for more, way more in depth, you could join Common House, where we do have the summer planning series going. I believe it's the 4th summer. I really need to count to make sure, but I think it's the 4th time through in that series. So there are 4 years worth of summer planning, templates, printables, all sorts of things, and lots of mothers with very good ideas, because that's the funnest fact about Common House. I'm not the smartest person in there. We have many smart women with many wonderful ideas, and we'd love to have you. So anyways, I will be back soon. Probably more summer planning, because it's literally all I'm doing around here, and I'm having so much fun with it. And with that, I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time.